Hello, everybody. This is Coach Razzo here. In this video, we're going to go ahead and address the classifying pairs of lines. So anything that's dealing with a little bit of like algebra is going to be more in the sense inside this section. So we're going to have to go ahead and review a little bit. Now, the biggest thing to go ahead and understand is to know which one's going to go ahead and be what form this is called. Now, in overall sense, we know that this is called, the M is called slope. And this B in algebra, it should be the y-intercept. So in other ways, it should be slope-intercept form. Okay, so this is all coming back. So if you're really good at algebra, then this should be pretty swell for you. Now, the one thing about this that you also need to understand is that when do you know when lines are parallel? So when lines are parallel, that means the slopes have to be the same. Okay, actually, let's use a different color for that one. So the slopes have to be the same. And the y-intercepts are what to each other? They're actually going to be different. Okay, so give you a sense of what to go and look for. Okay, so maybe if you have like a equation where it says y equals 2x plus 5, and then the other one's y is equal to 2x plus, I don't know, we'll say 7. They have the same slope, but they don't have the same y-intercept. Okay, now when it's perpendicular, let's change this one. When they're perpendicular, that means that the lines are going to touch at some point, but they have to create a certain angle. So if I have a line that goes this direction, and then I have another line that goes this way, they create 90 degrees there. So that's the angle that's created by the two lines. So line 1 and line 2. Now, in order for two lines to be perpendicular, they have to have opposite reciprocals. Okay, so I know my handwriting's a little bit bad right there. Reciprocals. So what does that mean? That means that the fraction or the values that they have for the slope has to be opposite. It has to be the opposite sign. It has to be flipped. So flipped and opposite signs. Now, that being said, I'll give you an example in a little bit. The y-intercepts are usually different, so we're going to go and label it as different. Now, the other part too is that if you're looking for an example of this, so let's say I have a slope of, we're going over here on this side. So let's say we have a slope of 3/4, and give me the opposite reciprocal of it. So flip it, and then take the opposite sign. If I say 7/2, give me the opposite reciprocal of it. Flip it, so it's 2/7, and then give me the opposite sign. Okay? Now, that being said, sometimes you may have an example where it's like, hey, I need you to go ahead and give me a opposite reciprocal to 5. Now, the thing about this 5 is that it has a certain value that's directly underneath it. So when you look at it, you can't really flip it because it's actually hiding. So the imaginary one's underneath this. So that's something that you have to understand. So if I can flip this now, I have 1/5 and then take it negative 1/5. Now let's do it again. So if I say, let's say I have 7, go ahead and flip it. Use your imaginary one, flip it. There you go. There's your other slope now. Okay. So examples, I'm going to show you for when they're perpendicular. So you can go and say we'll see 3x plus 1, and then get the opposite circle of it, flip it because there's an imaginary 1 underneath, and so you get 1/3 x plus 3. Okay, so I'm making up the y-intercepts as we're going. Now, next part, intersecting and coinciding. So when they're intersecting lines, initially what it means, like there might be lines that go this way, but they don't fit under the category of being parallel and perpendicular in terms of the slopes. So sometimes they make like a X like this, and they won't necessarily be perfect. So that means when the slopes are going to be different from each other. So different, and then the y-intercepts are usually going to be different too. So I'm just using this table as a sense for you to go ahead and reference to, so you can go ahead and use it when along the way. Okay. Oh, forget the y there. And then if I were to create one, I just make one up. So 5x plus 3, and then y is equal to 7x plus 1. So see how everything's kind of a little bit different in terms of the slope and also the y-intercept. Let's go with coinciding. Okay, so coinciding. So the biggest key word here is coin. And when you have coins that all together, so what you do is that when you have all coins together, then you put them all, you stack them on top of each other, right? So you stack them, you stack them, you stack them. So you stack them because they're initially the same and they're on top of each other. It's the same idea. So if I have a line that goes this direction, and then I happen to create another line, and it happens to go ahead and be on top of it too. So it does that. So I have the highlighted blue line and I have the blue, the regular blue line. Then that means that they will be coinciding. So they have the same everything, same characteristics. So let's see, trying to do a few things. That means they have the same slope and they have the same y-intercept. And what does that look like? Y is equal to 4x plus 2. Y is equal to 4x plus 2. So this would be the first line. This will be the second line. So these are the characteristics that you can go ahead and classify your lines with. Now, there's also another one called neither. So whichever one doesn't fit in any of these categories will be considered neither. So maybe like intersecting can go ahead and fall into that category for neither. Okay. So later on, you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay. Especially if you're in my class. Now, oh, that's how you do that. Learning new things along the way, guys. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work out one problem. Work out 3 problems, and then I'll close it out from there. So first things first, understand what slope is. So that's initially y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's going to go ahead and be m. Now I have rs to work with. So I have these points. The biggest thing is to identify which points that you're working with, so you can go ahead and figure it out. So x1 and y1, x2 and y2. So I'm going to solve those first. So I'm using the blue ones. So rs. So y2 minus y1. So I'm going to use this one. And that's going to go ahead and be -1 minus 5. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use highlighting. I'm going to use highlighters to let you know where I'm working at. So -1 minus -5 over 0 minus a -6. Now, if you see this 0 and you see this -6, it's right here. So my 0 is right here. This is -6 is right here. This little blue minus is actually part of the formula up here. Just be careful when you're looking for it. So when you minus a negative, turns to a positive. So -1 plus 5 gives you a 4. 0 plus 6 gives you a 6. And then you reduce it. So 2 over 3. 2 over 3. So that's going to go ahead and be my first slope here. Now I'm going to change colors. So the next slope for TV. Now, if I'm trying to solve this one, use red instead. If I need to go ahead and solve this one, then I need to go ahead and label these x1, y1, x2, and y2. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and identify which are points that line up together. So there is -7 minus 2 over 7 minus 1. So 7 minus 1. Okay, so that's part of our formulas. So -7 minus 2 gives you a -9. 7 minus 1 gives you a 6. And we're going to reduce this. So this is going to come out to go ahead and be around -3. And that'll be 2. because 3 fits to 9 3 times and 3 fits to 6 2 times. So that's going to be -3 and over 2, and that's going to be 2 over 3. So from here, I add both of these two. So those are my slopes, and I need to go and classify them. In this case, by looking at my chart, or you can go and identify by yourself, your opposite reciprocals, because they're flipped and one's positive and one's negative. So that means they're going to be perpendicular. So it's going to be perpendicular lines. Now, the biggest thing for many students or anybody in general, if you have issues with graphing, that's one of the things that we can help out too with. So just make sure you keep watching the videos. So 0, -1. So 0, going to be -1, down 1. -6, -5. So -6. Then -5 is right here. So you can go and connect them. Okay, trying to be perfect along the way. As for the red line, we have 1, 2. So it'll be 1, 2. And then 7, -7. So 7, -7. And so you want to go ahead and connect them. So there you go. There you go. So when they're perpendicular, they should be able to create like a perfect X along the way. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and be the perpendicular line. Now, next example. So on this one, we'll take y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay. So from here, label what you know. So that's my color for that line. So x1, y1, x2, and y2. Now, if you happen to go and forget, remember, points is x and y. So if I need to go and label these, I have 5 minus 2. So 5 minus 2 over 8 minus a -4. So for those who get this a little bit confused, we need to focus that this -4 is right here. So you need to go ahead and understand that those two parts are separate. This minus is this one right here. So try and clear up that misconception. So 5 minus 2 gives you, so 5 minus 2 gives you 3. When you minus a negative, turns to a positive. So 8 plus 4 gives you 12, and that'll be 1/4. Okay, so that's 1/4 right here. Now, next part over. Let's use a different color. Let's go with purple. So slope of JK. I need to figure out JK, which is right here. So I'm going to label my points x1, y1, x2, and y2. Do my work down here. Now I'm going to use this -9 and this 7. So -9 minus 7 over 1 minus a -3. And this goes back to that issue that we just talked about. This -3 is located right here. This -1, this -1 from the formula is right here. So that's the part that we got to fix. Now, let's go and continue solving it with purple. So that's -16 over, that's going to go ahead and be, that's going to go ahead and be a +4, and that'll become a -4 here. Now, this happens to go ahead and be another perpendicular problem, so just make sure you're on top of your perpendicular ones, because, and then this one, the biggest issue is that negative. So just make sure that you're focused on that part too. Now, they're opposite reciprocals, and there's one's flipped, and the other one is the opposite sign as well. So that means it's perpendicular. So as we graph this, so let's graph the purple one first. So -3 and then +7. 1, -9. I know, guys. And I know it's not a straight line. I know. Okay, I'm not trying to do my best over here. Okay, so let's go with the black line. -4, 2. So -4, 2, 8, 5, 8, 5. Kind of go in this direction here. Okay, so we're gonna go like a little box right there. So it's perpendicular lines overall. Okay, so you can give you a heads up what it looks like, so you have an idea of. And the biggest issue here is the signs. Okay, so be careful what you're doing, so it's not so much of a surprise to you. Now the last example. I know you just keep going, right? Last example here. So from here, what we're going to do is that we're going to go and solve for number 4. Now, alrighty. So last example. Now the issue with this one is, well, actually what it's asking for. So classify each line, parallel, perpendicular, coinciding, or intersecting. So in this one, we're going to go ahead and determine what type of classification this will be. Now, one thing about this is that you have to go ahead and see that this is already in slope-intercept form. And now this one happened to be in standard form, but we have to change this in order to find the slope. Now that means that we're going to have to go and take that equation, -2y plus x is equal to 2, and you have to go and solve for y, because we're trying to change this to look like y equals mx plus b. Now, this is already set for you. So here's some of the things that you can go ahead and use in your toolbox in geometry. So the slope and then the y-intercept. Right, so make it a little bit neater. Now I know the slope is 1/2, and I know my y-intercept is -1. Now here is where it's going to be changed. I'll tell you what's going to be classified as. If I need to solve this one, I need to go ahead and change this standard form to slope-intercept form. So I need to go ahead and solve for y. I'm going to go ahead and subtract x on both sides, which results in -2y, which is equal to -x plus 2, because this 2 is positive. I'm going to divide by -2 on both sides. So this cancels out, and my y is equal to negative divided by negative turns to a positive. You have your x divided by 2. Positive 2 divided by -2 becomes a -1. Now, some of you may like this, some of you may not like this, but if you can understand the part right here, what happens with this x is that it's dividing by 2. And you can go ahead and change that since you have an imaginary 1 right in front of it. So it'll become 1/2 x minus 1. And we're back to having this form. And so what's the slope? And what's the y-intercept? So this is the first one. My new one is 1/2. And then the y-intercept is going to become -1. So these both parts are happening to be the same. So same and same. And that goes back to our table that we just had, and what type of classification this will be. So if they have the same slope, same y-intercept, it'll be considered coinciding. Okay? So now, that being said, if I go ahead and -1/2 x minus 1, if I go ahead and draw it to -1, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, that's my line. And if I go ahead and draw this black line, it's going to go something like up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and they start overlapping. Okay? And that's kind of like directly on top of each other, but I just separate them a little bit so you can see the key differences. They have the same equation. The lines overlap each other, so it is coinciding. Okay, so I'm done. That's it for this section. Just make sure you go ahead and check up on the table. The more you understand the table and the more you understand the signs when you're plugging them into the slope formula, you're going to get better at this. Okay, so turn into the next video.